everyone. Let's get dangerous. Who are you talking to?
No one. Your mama. Shut up. Take your pick.
It's Jake Ciely.
He's opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy, tales of the ranks.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No. Burn.
Game on, you ducks. It is All in Fantasy. It is week 14 of the fantasy football season. And as we continue to have guests on, we have Jagger May at Jag Says. And we should not have hope. Like, if you didn't hear the beginning part, you didn't. We were talking off air and completely nerding out, as we like to do. That's the other side of our life. But yeah, actually, you know what? I was going to set that all up. But Jagger, make sure to tell everybody all the other stuff you're doing with like Fredo and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, my day job is football, so you can catch me over at Football Guys. I do a lot of their rookie content, and I host a Dynasty show. But when I put on the cow at night, me and Alfredo host a show called Unbinged, where we just talk about nerdy television, and you hear me go on tangents and rants about Dune and Rings of Power and how there's too many things to watch. So
there are way too many things to watch. That's actually what we were talking about, is that there's way too many things to watch right now. But that's not what we're here to talk about, so make sure you check that over there. And yeah, the podcast with Bob Harris, right? And if you're with Bob Harris, I know you have to be pretty good, because Bob Harris is the godfather. I call him the godfather of fantasy. So like, if you're with him, you have to be doing something right.
Yeah, heck yeah, yeah. Bob's our OG. Well, he's new to Football Guys, but like he's never not been with Football Guys at the same time, because, like you said, he's a godfather. He's an entity. He's a monolith within the industry. So
I like that, a monolith in the industry. I really like that. All right, but again, that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about fantasy, and yeah, we're gonna jump right into this week and kind of give you a rundown. But we're gonna jump around, because I think the first one, the biggest question people have right off the top, is the Isaac Guerendo situation. So Isaac Guerendo. I added another syllable into his first name. They're like Isaac. I like that. Isaac Guerendo. We're just going to make up a name for him. Anyway, Guerendo, we know everybody went crazy on Fab, and deservedly so, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about now it matters. So now do you actually push him into your lineup, knowing that he's got the backfield to himself? Obviously, as of today, the Trent Williams situation is something to watch. I'm sure you've seen it, and everybody knows. I've tweeted out before that they get a full yard less before contact for anybody in the backfield with and without Trent Williams, to give you an idea of how much that impact is. Even so, and it's not the best matchup against the Bears, it's a 16 bye. And I got to tell you, Jagger, like, I feel like maybe I'm aggressive, but I put him at 13 in between David Montgomery and Kenneth Walker, who kind of went belly up against the Cardinals the first time, and Kenneth Walker is getting more split work with Charbonnet, and then behind him, Tony Pollard, which, yeah, against Jacksonville should do really well, but, I mean, there's always a chance that the Jaguars are winning that game, and then what happens to Pollard in that situation. And Connor split backfield, as has been more of the recent and just has been. So it's like question marks behind him, and I'm kind of banking on the workload. Do you feel that's too aggressive, or are you kind of with me on the Guerendo situation? Actually, you know what's really good, too? I want to, sorry to jump in back into the question, but you said you're in on rookies, too, and so am I. So something I said during the draft is I thought he was actually the perfect fit for the Shanahan offense. So that might actually be clouding my opinion. So I want to throw that in there too, to see your opinion on that as a whole.
No, man, it's plug and play. To me, I don't think he's going to be as good or as efficient. And Trent Williams bothers me more than Isaac Guerendo, but especially like you said, there's 6 teams on bye. He's probably going to be an RB1, and they're probably going to feed him a lot, especially with Brock Purdy not being out. But we've seen what this system wants, from Miami to the 49ers. I mean, they just want a fast guy to hit the hole hard and get open. I mean, you almost think that Kyle Shanahan would run his team with AI, like the Borg, if he could, because he just really wants guys to do one job only and not really think a lot. So he's just like, go be fast, King. And that's what I expect with Isaiah Guerendo.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and the style is a big reason behind it. So I'm with you on the plug and play. All right, so let's go back. Actually, I brought up the Titans kind of in that conversation. And Calvin Ridley, I don't know if you saw, but I kind of joked, and I joked on the podcast on Monday about Calvin Ridley left 90 yards on the field in that game. And I looked it up. It was actually 93 unrealized air yards. I was like, wow. That's a pretty good estimation. Yeah, so, but here's the good news for this week is that a lot of it was there, and I'm sure everybody who has Calvin Ridley on their team was like watching that and being like, man, I know. I saw it all left on the field. I know it could have been a better day. Dominates man coverage. Good matchup for that. Are you with me? And Calvin Ridley wheels up as a top 20 wide receiver this week because I know a lot of people don't want to trust him as such, but I have him inside my top 20. Is that too aggressive for you?
I think he's top 20 rest of season. You got
Jacksonville.
Like yeah, Jacksonville. They are a minor inconvenience, guys. They're not a defense. They go out there and they're slightly better than practice dummies, and you're just hoping Trevor Lawrence has fun that day. That's what Jacksonville is as a team. Then you got Cincinnati. Ooh, that's fun. Indianapolis Colts, more points. Guess who they have again in Week 17? Jacksonville. If you're a psychopath, you're getting punished with Houston in Week 18. So that is, just don't play Week 18. Stop doing that.
Yeah. So the Ridley situation kind of ties into a different one for Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson has not just been leaving stuff on the field, it's actually has been catching a lot, but his air yards super down. Last 3 games has been disappointing. There's been more Devontae Adams, but not so much Devontae Adams. You're really like, oh wow, it's just all him. It's just Devontae Adams is the only one performing right now as Aaron Rodgers continues to be Aaron Rodgers. So air yards down, 2-man heavy, and next week. And it was like the only good option that you look at Garrett Wilson is really one game the rest of the way where the matchup is positive. And so I'm bringing that up to say is like, you're in playoff stretch here. You're either trying to fight to get in, maybe you're seeding, and then the playoffs going forward. I'm going to kind of throw it differently. It's like week 14, I don't know that you can bench him, but is that even a conversation you're having? Because for me, I think it is at this point. I'll put it this way. I'd bench him for NWI. I put Westbrook-Ikhine in my lineup before Garrett Wilson at this point.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Statistically, I guess you're right. He hasn't been over double digit in PPR.
I see that took you off guard there.
Yeah, I'm actually, when you physically put your eyes on the numbers, you're like, yeah, maybe homie's cooking there. But I'd always ask the question is who's in your flex and is it PPR? But, especially I'm looking at a lot of my best ball teams, the guys who went running back heavy. You probably have that option where you can just bench Garrett Wilson and you have someone else there, and then you got a bunch of running backs in your flex. Because like you said, like week 17 and 18, when you're going to need him most, he's got Buffalo and Miami. He's got Miami next week. You got Jacksonville and the Rams are the only ones I'm feeling great. And by great, I mean I hope Aaron Rodgers had the right cocktail of drugs that game and he can get it to him.
All right, well, then let me give you a couple toss-ups. Right now, week 14, let's assume we're not going to talk really about the Thursday night football game because then this won't be – we don't need to spend a lot of time. By the time you listen to it, you'll know anyway. But let's assume for this that there is no Romeo Doubs. Do you go Garrett Wilson or Jaden Reed?
Jaden Reed.
Okay. Let's assume Romeo Doubs is in the lineup. Do you go Garrett Wilson or Jaden Reed? Still same
Jaden
answer?
Reed. Yeah, still same answer.
Okay. Would you go Garrett Wilson or Khalil Shakir?
They're kind of the same when it's all said and done. Low A dot, a lot of targets. They can catch well. I'll probably go Garrett Wilson. I'd probably go Garrett Wilson.
Okay, I was trying to get you
week 14? Week 14,
yeah.
Shakir.
Yeah.
Shakir. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Would you go Marvin Harrison in that rematch of the Seahawks? So Marvin Harrison's been disappointing as that rookie that we were hoping for, but would you go Wilson or Harrison?
Harrison.
Okay. Wilson or Brian Thomas with Mac Jones?
Same, but different again. I'd probably go Brian Thomas Jr. because he can break one. Garrett Wilson is good, but he's not as explosive as BTJ is.
So really, we're not that far apart on Garrett Wilson. It just comes down to the shock value of saying Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as high as it is. I even said this. I know we're all feeling like we're about to get got. We're waiting for the shoe to drop. We're waiting for the fact of nobody wants to buy in. We're like, this doesn't make sense. This can't keep happening. We're logically inclined to say this is absurd. He's catching 40% of his balls for touchdowns. He's catching 21% of his targets for touchdowns. This doesn't keep happening. and yet it does. And I'm not saying it's not gonna, like, I'm not predicting 2 touchdowns. I'm not even predicting 1 touchdown. But he's got the Jaguars, Jagger. Like, is this? If he can't do it against the Jaguars, like, I feel like we're going to get 60% of the people finally starting him. Like, he's going to be mass started this week, and then it's going to end up being 2 catches for 17 yards, and we're all going to be like, what the hell happened?
If he doesn't get it done in Jacksonville, I believe in Vegas fixes in the NFL at that point. Because, like I said, everyone gets it done against Jacksonville. So.
I mean, I kind of do anyway. But then again, like, I'm also the guy that doesn't believe the lottery is real. So, like I believe in, like, the 10,000 ones where you're like, hey, my local 7-Eleven won it, or like the scratchers because they're scratch. But like the actual mega million, 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like, I don't believe those are real, because here's why. Have you ever met anybody? Like, think about all the people we know, and all the people they know, and all the people that they know, and not one person has any connection to anybody who's ever won. And we're all these multi-hundred millionaires that are supposedly winning the lot. I believe it's a free tax. It's like the government's just keeping it. They announce these fake winners that are probably dead people. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Jake, we're becoming fast friends.
You're with me on this?
Yes, dude. And then when they show someone, they roll out like a dead person, almost like jokes aside, but like, really, they're always old. I've never seen like a 17-year-old stoner who is just like, yeah, these are right numbers, and then won the lottery. You're telling me it's always old people? You're one of the smallest demographics and the largest voter bases, whatever, you know.
I love it. Thank you. Finally, somebody with me. I've been trying to convince Nicole, my wife. I'm like, it's not real. Like, we're not buying tickets. It's not real. It's just like, I'm glad you're with me on this. All right, let's see if you're with me on this one. And like, as a joke, I actually did an article way back a couple of years ago on revenge games, and then they're not real. Like, they're a third of the time they score more. This is actually the findings. I did every revenge game over a 10-year span, and I gave a bare minimum. Like, the players had to have started, I think it was 20 games, if I remember correctly. I got to go back and find the study. But I gave them a bare minimum, and I gave them, like, they actually had to be starter worthy, so it's not like, oh, you know, the revenge game was like, oh, they got 1 start and they hadn't started all year or something like that. But anyway, so previous teams' revenge games, a third score more, a third scored less, and a third scored exactly the same as they always did, within a 5 to 10% variance, obviously, because it's the same, being like if you normally score 10 and you scored 8. So I'm saying all that to say this. People love revenge games because they only it's like the Madden curse. You only remember when it happens. But Kirk Cousins has been miserable, and this is actually a miserable matchup for Kirk Cousins. Is there any hope, as I even just said all that, is there any hope for a revenge game for Kirk Cousins, or is he completely off your roster, on bench, just sabotage drop? Would you sabotage drop for Kirk Cousins for somebody else who needs a quarterback?
He is the ideal sabotage drop. And I will say I would hang on to him one more week, just because there's a lot of, I would say, broken coverage, just because Brian Flores does all those exotic blitzes. They give up a lot to wide receivers, so I think there could be some things that happen. But if he doesn't, even if he does have a good game, you are revenge dropping him. I watched that game. The cooked allegations are back, homie. I mean, the slowest balls on like a 10-yard out. It was pretty egregious.
It was like, all right, so let me say this. I mean, just a sabotage drop. What if you've been playing the streaming game, and I'm trying to like give Kirk Cousins some hope. What if you've been playing the streaming game, he comes against the Vikings and plays well? Would you be like, I know you said sabotage drop for that reason, but plays well enough against the Vikings with the Raiders, Giants, and Commanders to finish things out, you won't be tempted to use him as your quarterback after that?
It really just depends on who I have now, especially if you think about a lot of these young bucks who are giving you a safe rushing floor.
There's a good one. Would you go Caleb Williams or Kirk Cousins the rest of the way?
Caleb Williams, man.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
Shane Waldron was a blight on the NFL, and now he's gone. So.
All right, well then let's talk about another potential trap, and it comes down to the comparison is Westbrook-Ikhine, except he's Westbrook-Ikhine with a fewer targets, but it's actually the exact same touchdown rate, slightly lower touchdown to target percentage. It's 21 to 20% for MVS. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who I got Florio to come with me on Monday. Finally, I've been championing this MVS. I've been starting MVS since his second game because I saw the first game with him. And I was like, man, if he's getting 60% of the routes in his very first game, what do we know about Derek Carr? Chucks it downfield, chucks it downfield, chucks it downfield. And that's about the amount of times he does it, about 3 times a game. But is MVS against the Giants a potential trap? Or is this just, it's similar to Westbrook-Ikhine, like it has to happen against the Giants, right?
Yeah, it has to. They have nobody there. I do the start-sit show for football guys as well. And there was a Saints wide receiver every week where someone's like, do I start Mason Tipton? I'm like, no, you don't start Mason Tipton.
What means?
Yeah, you don't have to do that. But when MVS was there, I'm like, okay. I don't think people understand the significance between being a scout team player and then at least a role player like MVS is. So I think they're going to force feed him. I don't think Rashid Shaheed is that much better than MVS, to be honest. They play a similar role. So especially against the Giants, you got to break one, buddy. Or I'm going to quit believing in Santa. I'll tell you this. I'll declare it right now on All In Fantasy Tales of the Ranks. I will quit believing in Santa if MVS doesn't get it done against the Giants.
Well, and then fiance doesn't have to buy any presents. So there you go. You know, it works out for her, right?
I save us money.
All right. Let me bring up another one for you. And actually, you know what? I did it with Westbrook-Ikhine and all that. Let me give you a toss-up. Would you go MVS? And I'll give you a little sneak preview into mine, or these 2 wide receivers directly behind him in my rankings. I go MVS, Jalen Waddle, and Deebo Samuel. With your playoffs on the line, are you with me on that? MVS over Waddle and Samuel. Waddle, one good game in the last half of the season against the Jets, and then Deebo Samuel, who doesn't look 100%, let's be honest, against the Bears. Can I get you to come with me on this one? I know you didn't like Westbrook-Ikhine as high, but do you like MVS ahead of those 2?
I like him ahead of Deebo. Deebo just doesn't look good right now. He does. Deebo in a good season is rarely healthy. Let's put it that way. And now
that's true.
Yeah, and now he looks worse than I've seen him in a while. You got Brock Purdy banged up on top of that. No CMC, which matters. You know, I'm not saying that Isaac Guerendo can't play, but he obviously isn't going to be moving the chains like CMC is. That's an easy one. Where I lose it, it's hard for me to put him over Waddle because I don't know, man. I guess I just saw that one game.
It's that one game, which is my point. Like, all right, here's his game log. I'll even give you his half PPR finishes since, pick a spot. And like, so week 1 was 17th, 39, 67, 60, 48, 92, 57, 46, 34, 57, 3, 36. His highest finish since week 1 outside of that 3, which we all saw against the Patriots, is 34th. Sorry. Well, 36th, he was 9.3 points. It was a wider margin for teams being played in the other game because it was 7.1, so he finished at 34th. But even with all that, like, MVS versus what? Like, put it this way. Here's my argument, is that of their ceilings, what's really the difference? And it's actually been happening more frequently for MVS. There's my argument.
That's fair. And when you think about when you're expecting explosion, I guess I don't blame anyone for putting MVS in a.
Oh, sorry. I thought you finished real quick there on that one. All right.
Oh, I accidentally muted myself. Sorry.
That's what that was. I was like, man, you finished that sentence quick. Like, hard stop. Like, I don't blame it, MVS at all. That's it. Hard stop.
Well, that's like, I don't blame anyone at this point for putting MVS in over Waddle, but because it's hard for me to wrap my head around Waddle. And Waddle also didn't have a quarterback for most of the season.
Okay, that's fair. There's a fair counter argument. All right. How about this one? Very, very popular pickup if you didn't, have Guerendo, need wide receivers, whatever it might be. But Adam Thielen went from first game back, kind of behind. Actually, he was 20 routes behind David Moore in his first game back. And then his second game back, he was old Adam Thielen. And I don't mean old as in age because he looked young and spry Adam Thielen, as in old Adam Thielen his first half of 2023, where I'm picking him up with NWI. I'm picking him up arguably over maybe even MVS question mark, but it's more so the fact that now you have to make the decision because who does he have in this first game after everybody picked him up? Because nobody played him last week. And now you pick him up and you get the Eagles defense. So did you pick him up just to put him on your bench?
I mean, you got to play keep away sometimes.
You do.
That is some gamesmanship. And I guess I don't like to make decisions because of reasons like that, if that makes sense. I will play keep away, but it's like, well, I picked him up. I had to play him. You know, I am going to play the matchup, but I'm also not going to let someone else get a good player just because I don't need them, if that makes sense. Because more than likely, I have some fodder on my bench to get rid of. I need to worry about depth. So it's really, and I hate to use this cop-out answer, but as someone who handles a lot of start sits, I tell them, I was like, give me your roster and as much context before I tell you to drop players or put them in your lineup over good guys.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I got a lot of questions where people were like, oh, I have tons of running back depth. I don't even know if I would start Guerendo. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're going to pick them up off the waivers to make sure somebody doesn't use Guerendo against you.
Exactly.
And then you're hating life. Like, yeah, you can't do that. You can't just let him sit out there for free for somebody else. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I like 100% on that one. All right, so Cade Otton, I wrote up the fact that I'm giving him one last chance. It is a good matchup, and even without the good matchup, it's actually inflated a little bit because they've been playing a lot of really good tight ends. But I will say on the fact is he still saw two red zone and one end zone targets. Florio agrees with me. I'm kind of seeing if we can get a consensus here, like both guests this week, giving Otton one more chance, not even just one more chance. I mean one more chance as in he's in my top 10 still this week. I would play him over Kittle if Brock Purdy is out. Like, that's how far I would go. Like, he's up there with Laporta for me as taking the risk that, you know what, 2 weeks ago was one thing. Last week, he still had a 20% target share. I'm ready to give him one more chance. Are you giving him one more chance, or are you done?
100% giving him a chance, especially against the Raiders. You want to talk? They're another speed bump, man. They are a speed bump defense. And I think of Cade Otton as a homeless man's Chris Godwin. He's playing the slot right now. Mike Evans is doing his role. But essentially, since Chris Godwin came back and became the slot god, they they moved him back in line. Now he's back where he's comfortable again. And especially against these matchups, who else are you playing the tight end right now? With 6 people on bye, beggars can't be choosers. I know Will Dissly was the hottest name last week, so.
Will Dissly was Will Dissly, I'm getting a lot of questions about him this week too. So who else we got? We got a few more before we get out of here. You know what? Let's go back to Caleb Williams. We tossed up Caleb Williams versus Kirk Cousins, and a lot of people need quarterbacks this week with a lot of good ones on a bye. Have you seen enough for Caleb Williams even against the 49ers? And I know it's not the same 49ers defense that it has been, but I have Caleb Williams almost inside my top 12. And I actually put somebody right in front of him that apparently a lot of people aren't with me, even after just going bananas against the Broncos. And I get it. I prefaced it with this, Jagger. I said, if you don't want to risk a 2, don't play Jameis Winston. But I'm willing to, I want to make it into my playoffs. I want to score the most possible. I don't want to look at him and be like, man, I missed the playoffs by 2 points. And yeah, Jameis Winston getting you only 2 could hurt, but he's going to miss wildly if he missed wildly for you. So I actually have the order of Goff, Winston, then Caleb Williams in front of Russell Wilson, in front of Brock Purdy, in front of Geno Smith. Is that overreaching, or do you think that's fair at this point?
I think it's a bit overreaching just because of the matchup. Now, I will say Denver's been a tough defense, but he's got Pittsburgh again, Kansas City again. Cincinnati's easy. Miami's been tough. Baltimore, I don't love him the rest of the season. And again, it's that low floor. I just don't trust the Browns at all. And I get the appeal of Jameis Winston, but I would rather have someone like Caleb Williams because, again, he's giving you a safe rushing floor. The offense just looks much better since Shane Waldron has been gone. But I don't know, man. I hope I'm not hanging on to priors, but San Francisco's been pretty meh. Minnesota's been giving it up. Detroit's been big games. I just like the matchups for Caleb Williams long-term, including next week against San Francisco over Jameis Winston. So I'd almost want to drop Jameis Winston as kind of like a Trojan horse, man. He looks like a Trojan horse QB. So
why I gotta do my boy dirty like that? Actually, there's even a report on The Athletic that DTR could come in at some point, just as an evaluation process for next year. Not that they don't know, but still could. Anyway, just that was a complete sidebar that you might not even be able to count on Winston the rest of the way, because I know he's got a really tasty matchup. I think it's week 16 or 17. He's got
Buffalo week 18 and week 16 Cincinnati.
That one. Yeah. So there you go, Cincinnati. Like you gotta feel good about that one. That's very enticing if he's the quarterback. But a few more before we get out of here. The Chargers offense is kind of a conundrum right now, both in the backfield, and then we have potentially Ladd McConkey not being out there. So first, the running backs. There's appeal with Waddle. It feels like the entire fantasy community wants Waddle to happen and loving on Waddle. All that being said, Kamani Waddle is still part of a complete committee, and I say committee because Hassan Haskins is out there stealing pass blocking work, which is just more snaps. Now, but here's the thing. You don't run on the Chiefs, but you might be able to pass to the running backs. Would you risk Gus Edwards or Waddle this week? And then we'll talk about the wide receivers.
Gus Edwards is who I want. That's what I recently just said on the Dynasty show. Depending on how shallow of a Dynasty roster you have, Gus has been on some waivers. I just know what his role is. It's the same role he's been in since the beginning of Gus Edwards' time, where if you could count on one guy to fall into the end zone, it would be Gus Edwards. Whereas Kamani Waddle, yeah, guys, we saw 4 plays that changed everyone's life. Every Dynasty scout saw, like, this is exactly the player that I watched on YouTube, and I think he's a stud. I just think it's a lot of wish casting there. And at the end of the day, Edwards is ugly, but he's the ultimate Harbaugh guy, and I mean that from both Harbaughs. He came over from Baltimore doing the same thing, and he started out doing something similar before J.K. Dobbins went on a tear. So he's the one I want, and that's honestly if I need someone for my flex. I'm not super happy putting him in.
Okay. Then on the passing game side, and I'm with you, I have Gus Edwards just a tick inside my top 30 running backs. It's not like super appealing where I'm like, oh yeah, got to get him out there in the lineups. I have him in the realm of like Jalen Warren and Nick Chubb and stuff like that. Zach Charbonnet and Waddle further down, but I mean, still playable. It's 16 bye. We're desperate here. I mean, hell, Sincere McCormick is inside my top 40. That just tells you how bad this week is. So on the receiver side of things, Ladd McConkey, if in, is an easy play. But if out, do you turn to Joshua Palmer? Do you give Quentin Johnston one more chance? Do you even want either one of them? Even if Ladd McConkey plays, like, are you even messing with the others? And Will Dissly, would you move up Will Dissly? Because this is kind of a, do you wait for, but actually phrase it this way for you, Jagger. If your backup plans, because this is probably the better question for everybody out there. Sorry, everybody, I just threw the question out after I asked it, but I think this is a better way because it is the Sunday night football game. If you have to wait for Ladd McConkey, because you probably want to if you're trying to make your playoffs, would you wait for him knowing your backup plan was Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, or even having to play Will Dissly into flex?
Yes. Just because of what Ladd McConkey's done. And I've always been a Josh Palmer guy. I think he's a better NFL player than he is a fantasy asset. And I always treat him like a handcuff where when it was Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, you could almost plug Josh Palmer into one of those roles to see an uptick of volume. And I know that was a different coaching staff, but it's kind of the same now. And to be honest, the only reason why Josh Palmer hasn't been more relevant is he's been fighting injury all year. Quentin Johnston, man, had 4 drops. I don't know, man. You're not just depending on Quentin Johnston to break one. You're depending on failure. You're depending on like someone to poop the bed and leave Quentin Johnston free, then for him to catch it, and on top of that, for him to get in. And I know that everyone's like, well, that's just football. What happens all the time? He can't create for himself at all. And then when he can get open, he can barely haul it in for himself. So like he needs like a sippy cup essentially for targets. And I don't know how you can really depend on that.
Me neither. And what you can depend on is Jagger. I think did we hit everything that I wanted to hit on today? I think so. And you got any? Look, put this on you. I didn't even tell you this one, so see how quickly you can think off the top of your head. anybody I didn't bring up that might be like, hey, you need a plug-in, here's your sleeper for the week. Or like somebody that you just might not be given enough respect. I know sleepers are kind of like, whatever, sleepers. But like just somebody that like might be overlooked, a Jakoby Meyers, even somebody like, just somebody that you're like, you know what, I'm giving respect. Similar to me with Westbrook-Akina. I give you enough time. I kind of talked long enough to hopefully give you enough time to think, because I want to see if you have your boy this week, like my Westbrook. I'm going to die by Westbrook-Akina, apparently.
Well, where you got me is you named the guy I was going to give was Jakoby Meyers. Like,
to go with it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a Pats fan. And I told someone, I was like, I don't know about Jakoby Meyers with AOC out there. And then it turns out he's still the same guy. And every time I see Jakoby Meyers out there tearing it up, getting 10 targets, I'm like, man, I wish the Patriots had a guy like that. I wonder if he would have cost the same thing as Juju Smith-Schuster. And especially when you have this many people on a bye, the targets are funneled to Brock Bowers, Jakoby Meyers, and then what's his name? Not Trey Harris. That's a rookie.
Trey Tucker. Yeah.
Trey Tucker.
I'm not doing. And Trey Tucker pops up like once every 6 weeks, and then there's the people that are just like, Trey Tucker's a thing, and I'm like, yeah, this is like what the third time. Yeah, exactly.
In best ball. Yeah. So it's like, that's what I was going to say. Trey Tucker, he gets the crumbs if there are any in this offense.
Yeah. Like we're relying on somebody after Jakoby and Brock Bowers, which, what's funny is somebody else was like, no interest in streaming Aiden O'Connell. I was like, the dude legitimately had a game last year where he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. Like 3 quarters of no completed passes. Like, no, I don't care how good you looked against the Chiefs. You know what? There's a lot of teams that just randomly all of a sudden look good. Am I crazy for saying that? There's no way you're going with Aiden O'Connell, even as... Okay, all right. Even in like 14 team.
I'm going to give your audience the same thing I give mine. Guys, just because you picked a guy up doesn't mean, like, this guy, the only reason why he's on the field is people had to metaphorically die for him to get there. You don't have to put this guy in your lineup over people who've been scoring real American points all season.
So, as you just heard, Gardner Minshew died so Aiden O'Connell could live. Actually, the Beowulf was killed so Aiden O'Connell could live. It's at Jag says, one more time, mention everything you got going on, including the stuff, like I said, with Fredo, so everybody wants to watch that with discussing like films and stuff like that, all that type of thing. So make sure, it's your pimp yourself 30 seconds. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I'm over at Football Guys. We're working on a rookie guide. I know if you listen to The Athletic or read The Athletic, you got Dane Brugler, but we do our best over there. If you're a Dynasty junkie, like some real sicko stuff, then come listen to me and Jeff. And if you're a nerd, if you look at Jake's background, you're like, wow, that's a cool guy. Come over to Unbinged with me, my buddy Alfredo, who also works at Football Guys. We put on a pretty good show. We're talking Creature Commanders, Dune Prophecy. If it is nerdy and you think, wow, a virgin in high school would love that, we still talk about it.
That should be your new slogan going forward. There you
Unbinged. Go. Welcome, virgins.
There you go. Wow. I don't know that you might have to put like uncensored on there too or something. But anyway,
my bad.
Yeah, make sure you follow him. He'll actually be back again next week, so hopefully you enjoy Jagger, because we'll talk to him again and maybe mix in a little bit of Dynasty, because as everybody knows, I do the same thing. Spend a lot of time. Maybe we'll kind of sneak preview. Maybe come in with some like maybe Dynasty buys, as people love to. They got knocked out and want to think about next year, and maybe like on like a player or two for next year. But we'll do that stuff. That'll be next week. And so good luck that you're actually still in the playoffs. Make sure you follow Jagger, and we'll talk to you on Monday. I can't believe you haven't cut me off yet, Fox. I'm still talking here and just kind of like was hoping that you were just going to jump in